The man who brutally murdered his student girlfriend in Dunedin 18 years ago told the parole board today he felt remorse and shame for his actions, including the defence he used in court. Clayton Weatherston stabbed and mutilated Sophie Elliot before using the defence of provocation, trying to blame Elliot for what he did to her. And now the 50-year-old was denied parole and will have to remain behind bars for 2 more years. We'll speak to Sophie's father Gil soon, but first, senior reporter Juliet Speedy has today's developments.
Clayton Weatherston, a narcissistic, obsessive and violent killer. 18 years after murdering his ex-girlfriend, he's now eligible for parole. Sophie Elliot was a beautiful, bright student who had just finished an honours degree in economics when ex-boyfriend and university lecturer Clayton Weatherston brutally murdered her just as she was about to leave for a new job at Treasury in Wellington. Clayton Weatherston fronted the board today via video link from Christchurch Men's Prison when the board heard he wasn't seeking parole. Weatherston told the board he deeply regretted the killing and that it was a rejection of both Sophie and himself. He said he had flashbacks which caused him anxiety, distress and shame. But he said his narcissism he didn't believe was as prominent as some reports made it out to be. Sophie was at home packing for Wellington when Weatherston turned up at her door telling her mum he had a farewell gift. But he locked himself in Sophie's bedroom and brutally murdered and mutilated her in a prolonged attack.
I was on the Family Violence Death Review Committee for many years, so I've seen many murders. This is right up the top of one of the very worst. I mean, to stab someone 220 times and then to disfigure many parts of their body in a premeditated situation in their own home when their mother was present, I think it's one of the very worst.
During the 5-week trial, he admitted killing Sophie, but sought to get off the murder by using the partial defence of provocation. Weatherston took the stand, giving 5 days of self-indulgent evidence.
Sorry, I just had to do that.
Meanwhile, every detail of Sophie's private life was laid bare in court, including many excerpts from her deeply private personal diary. This was Sophie's late mother, Sophie Elliot, on the day the verdict was delivered.
They were her private thoughts, they were her privacy, and I think for anybody who writes diaries, you know that you don't actually want anybody else to read them. And we found that really very offensive.
Her close friends had to give evidence about her sex life.
And you're aware that that developed into a sexual relationship?
Yes.
As a result of that trial, including the public uproar, the partial defence of provocation was abolished by the then government. It was a controversial decision at the time because many in the legal field believed it did still have a place in law, even if not in the Sophie Elliot case.
I think people saw the awful trauma that we all had to go through, listening to someone to kind of justify an extremely premeditated, brutal killing and saying that you must understand that, you know, I was provoked in this situation and it didn't even meet the requirements at the time because provocation requires sort of an immediate reaction to something that is would have upset the ordinary person to such a degree they may have acted in this way. This wasn't an immediate reaction. This was a premeditated, planned situation.
Weatherston, now aged 50, was initially sentenced to 18 years, but the board told him today he still has a long road ahead, and it will now be at least 20 years after his heinous crime before he is again considered for parole.
Sophie Elliott's father Gil spoke to me earlier from his home in Clyde in central Otago. I asked him if he was surprised that Weatherston didn't seek to be released at this parole hearing.
Sort of, but I know that he hasn't had any rehabilitation, so I would have been quite surprised for that reason, and also they don't usually allow offenders out on their first parole hearing, so no, I'm not totally surprised.
Can you share with us what your message was to the parole board?
Well, I said that I don't want him out. I don't think that his mental state will necessarily be any different now than it was 18 years ago, because he's a narcissist anyway, and narcissists don't change. So they're like paedophiles. Once you're a narcissist or a paedophile, you're like that for life. So I couldn't see any reason why he would be different now than he was 18 years ago.
Weatherston did say today that he was wrong to have put the blame on Sophie during his murder trial and that he should have focused on his own behaviour. Do you accept that as any kind of apology of sorts?
No, I don't. I don't, because I don't believe him. I mean, at the trial, he told an awful lot of lies, and in fact, a lot of what he says doesn't make sense anyway. No, I wouldn't believe anything like that came from him. I suspect that his lawyer, I may be wrong, but I suspect his lawyer might have put him up to that, in the hope that it would have some effect on the parole board.
So, in your view, he is still a risk to the public, and there's no evidence that points to any kind of rehabilitation during his 18 years behind bars?
Well, I understand, if anything, he's probably more in a position now than he ever was to cause mayhem, because he's been pumping iron, if you like, in the prison gym, and so if anything, he's even stronger now than he was when he killed Sophie. So, and he was big enough then. So no, I'd hate to meet him in the street. That's for real.
Gil Elliott there, Sophie Elliott's father. Thank you so much for your time today, Gil.
Thank you.